And now we're on Chapter 2. Turf Wars continues and follows the same structure as the heist, so that means once again we're getting a completely disjointed city whose crimes and theming are betrayed by the pointlessness of ever returning. The structure remains a critical problem. But let's not start on a bad note, because Turf Wars is an improvement over the heist in almost every way. Let's begin. Turf Wars kicks off with Yuri and Spider-Man having the upper hand. Hammerhead's locked in Harlem Sanitarium, the police are preparing to infiltrate, and Spider-Man's taking out goons left, right and center. In fact, you could measure the length of this fight with the weathering of a stone, but I still like it. While it feels like padding, opening this DLC with a high-paced SWAT infiltration thing makes it feel like an escalation from the first DLC. It's an Act 2, and that's upheld by the rest of the story. If there's anything else of note, it's that we're immediately introduced to our next new enemy type. This lot are a damn sight better than the minigun brutes. With both a shield and a jetpack, they're invulnerable to attack from the front and swoop across the battlefield, leaving electricity on their path. They're dangerous, and that means they need to go first, but it's not exactly a battle of gods. You only need one bar of finisher to take them out, and those finishers can just glitch through their shields. Since they're always so low flying, they're also very easy to web up. But that's not such a bad thing, nothing wrong with being a glass cannon. And given that they contribute area of denial, shields, and dash attacks to Hammerhead's thug encounters, they're a great addition. Having aged a couple of years, you can finally enter the sanitarium, and what a fantastically realised environment it is. Both slightly creepy and well in service of the old times vibe you get from the Magia Mafia. It all leads up to what we saw in the trailers. The scene with Hammerhead and the cop hostages is beautifully done, although very cliché. The game introduced us to this lieutenant, Davis, whose daughter gave him a Spider-Man watch. An innocent, sympathetic good guy going up against a villain in the intro? What could possibly go wrong? Oh, yeah. And there's not much tension when Hammerhead starts killing the copstages. We've got Nameless Disposables and Yuri Watanabe. Who are they gonna kill, I wonder? By far the best thing about this scene is Yuri auditioning for John Wick 3, and the theme of fear. Hammerhead's deal is that he needs to teach the police force to fear the crime families once again. They need to be reminded of their place. That idea is characterized in the creepy setting, the way the lights flicker in the fight, and Yuri standing alone in the dark with only a lighter. I suppose this is also symbolism, but that won't matter until later. Suffice it to say, Yuri wants to take Hammerhead down, but Spider-Man offers to follow up the next lead for her. Supposedly, Hammerhead's crew are gathering at the bar with no name. Using the Spider-Bot, we're slipping into a group of the world's most visually impaired thugs and eavesdropping on their conversations. The bar's got a great aesthetic, the dialogue is hilarious, and it's fairly effective as a stealth arena too. You actually do need to avoid bumping into people. If you're at eye level, you should only pass when they look away, and when you're eavesdropping, you should only begin when you're hidden under an object. Although I'm not even sure if you can start if you're not considered safe, so that last one might be an illusion. Either way, it's fun enough. We learn that Hammerhead's got a set of business fronts throughout the city, and that his next targets are the Dons of the other Magia families. We got what we came for then. Time to save the Dons. But not before letting MJ know about Hammerhead's fronts.
I have the location of 4 Hammerhead businesses.
Oh dear.
And I'm willing to bet real money that they're not legit.
You have no money to bet, but I appreciate the sentiment.
No.
I'll give them right away.
Why
No.
don't you let me do the legwork? I'll pass
Yes.
along what I find.
That would be so helpful.
Yes.
Let's talk.
Okay.
That's right, instead of some dumbass collectathon, we get new hideouts. Yeah, they're just reskinned demon hideouts, but they provide a real challenge, look pretty cool, and mean the Turf War city always has a reliable source of endgame combat encounters. That's a big improvement over the heist. Anyway, we had some Dons to save. This mission tries its best. It introduces us to these digger things that come up from the ground to deliver more goons. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing bad about more combat in this game, but this is yet another mission where you've got to measure your playtime in facial hair growth, and we don't even get anywhere. By the end, the Dons are just gone. Following this, we're tasked with a police escort. It gives an enjoyable Dark Knight vibe, and clearing out the snipers is cool, but again, there's about 50,000 waves of Hammerhead thugs to fight in Central Park and near the river. This DLC's padding is truly outrageous. Thankfully, it's upheld by the gorgeous weather, the combat itself, and the pacing, which is still sky high. You're zipping from a police escort to an ambush to snipers to a truck chase and then rushing back to Yuri at the precinct with no downtime. It turns out the police escort was just a ploy to get you away from the real target. The precinct, now with its wall burst open and dead cops littering the car park. Yuri breaks. She threatens to arrest you if you try to stop her. She's going full John Wick's dog, and that means a lot for her character. Despite the fact that going up against Hammerhead's crew alone is completely suicidal, it goes to show what repeated loss and extreme stress has done to her mental health. Although, there's not really any consequences. You track Yuri all the way back to the bar with no name, and she kicked the door in, killed about 10 thugs, and destroyed the entire place. What? Yeah, okay, the John Wick thing's jumped the shark and is just now re-entering the Earth's upper atmosphere. Are you trying to tell me that one police captain with only a pistol managed to take out an entire bar full of thugs? How does she blow the door open? Isn't she a mass murderer now? I know this never would have happened, but I could forgive so much more if we actually got to see Yuri Wick Chapter 2. After some bollocking around at a shipping yard, we learn about Hammerhead's plan. And to cement the Dark Knight's influence on this DLC, Hammerhead makes his big show at a construction site. The mechanic here is to keep the thugs away from the mixer controls, and that's fair enough. It makes the already large-scale fight significantly more intense. I'd like to see much more along these lines in the future. And for our next improvement over the heist, we climb up to the top of the tower, and there waits a boss fight. Hammerhead explains his motivations once again, which boils down to bringing back the good old days, and that everyone will respect the Magia once more if he kills Spider-Man live. Funny thing is, he's not going to be doing the killing, because disappointingly, Hammerhead's only challenging thanks to the goons he's got backing him up. His attacks are as follows: a big headbutt, nothing special, same dash attack seen from the jetpack guys, and a big-ass laser. These attacks only matter when you're distracted, because on his own, Hammerhead is a pushover. You can use finishers, environmental object, and he's very rarely invulnerable. Having options is good, but you're not incentivized to use any of them when the boss has no way of responding to anything you do. While his presence makes the overall encounter plenty entertaining, it doesn't feel all that different from any other. It's another disappointment from the bosses. With Hammerhead on his knees, Yuri returns and restrains Spider-Man, who should really know better by now than to stand there like a muppet. She repeatedly shoots Hammerhead, preparing to execute him.
Last time we met, you said something about fear.
Spider-Man breaks free at the last second and whips Yuri's gun up, but the shot still impacts Hammerhead's skull. It seems he's dead, and she stands there and her men stare at her. It's quite a powerful moment. It's over for Yuri, from a police captain who thinks she's got everything under control, to a murderer now that whatever she does can't stop people from dying. This, I imagine, is a setup for Wraith, Yuri's comic book alter ego, but it's not over for Hammerhead.
Who says he's dead? Boss.
Yeah, okay, The Dark Knight was a good movie, guys, we get it. Don't take that as a criticism, by the way. I can't think of many better sources of inspiration. And with us left on a cliffhanger, the credits roll. Turf Wars' story is saved by two things: its high-paced crime thriller vibe and Yuri's development. As such an integral character, we do actually care what happens to her, so seeing her change this dramatically has at least a considerable effect. Hammerhead's no joker with basic, uninteresting motivations, but his plan is engaging. We don't know what he's going to do next, and he's always got something else up his sleeve. That, along with Yuri, keeps the story engaging for the entire duration of the DLC, which is another improvement over the heist. Although I would also argue that there's nothing in Turf Wars that beats Black Cat's interactions with Spider-Man, and if you're really into that, the heist might still be the better story. I think it was a solid Act 2, and instead of a series of awful plot twists to leave us guessing, the cliffhanger this time actually has me excited for Silver Lining. All the plates are spinning: Miles, Sable, Yuri, Black Cat, Hammerhead. Silver Lining is set up to be a killer ending. But the story is far from the only improvement. Have you seen the suits? Despite the precedent set by the heist, we're back in business. Coincidentally, two of the suits I specifically mentioned in my original critique are now here. The OG Iron Spider, awesome, even though it's not a perfect representation, and the Mark I Spider Armor, also great. I know that we now have a total of 4 Spider Armors, but Mark I mattered the most. And it's cool to have a cartoon suit in the game as well. That leaves us with the side content. We know the Hammerhead fronts are good, but Screwball is also here, and she's just as eye-gougingly irritating as last time. Thankfully though, her challenges aren't quite as awful. The one completely new challenge type we get is Stealth, and it did exactly what I hoped for. With motion cameras you need to consider as well as the thugs themselves, Stealth is deeper and significantly more challenging. But the photobombs also make a return. The problem is, for the highest scores, you need to get the photobombs, which means you need to follow them. The entire challenge is just zipping from photobomb to photobomb, which means in reality you have very little control over what you do. The only difficulty is getting there quickly and webbing up the motion cameras on the way. A stab in the back for what could have been a good evolution of Taskmaster Stealth Challenge. Combat is no different from last time, but the Gadget Challenge has massively improved. Yeah, it still boils down to spamming gadgets out, but because the photobombs are much bigger and very easy to hit, it, you don't have to rely on the AI working for you, and so it's far more skill-based than last time. On top of that, there's more method than madness to your spamming than ever. The photobomb opportunities means there's always something to aim for, literally. And even without that, you want webbed enemies to actually make contact with the wall, which means you're always considering the direction you want to concussion blast. This puts the previous iteration to shame, and while I still think the photobombs are a plague on these challenges because they ruin the flow, this shows how it's done without putting players in the hospital. Overall, the situation is getting better, but it's still not good. I'll tell you what, suplexing Screwball off Avengers Tower would really make it worth it in the end. Insomniac? You listening? With challenges wrapped up, it's time to address crimes. There's a vast increase in the amount of crimes we get this time compared to the heist, but that is not a good thing. Let me run you through them. Mob Assault is some guys with guns. Magia Execution is some guys with guns, but there's more victim character models. Magia Assault is a larger amount of guys with guns, and Magia Snipers is guys with guns, but on a roof. We also get a car chase faction vehicle battle, which is the same as every other multi-car chase, so even shallower than the puddles that this game doesn't have. And worse than that, whenever you take out one car, Spider-Man decides that he needs to come to a full stop and tell the player that the other car's getting away, when that other car would no longer be moving were I actually able to play the game. But by far the worst of the lot is Police Escort. You're just following some cars and then running to a group of maybe 4 or 5 guys to beat up. I'm sure as hell not willingly going to follow around slow-moving cars for minutes at a time when I know exactly what completely uninteresting thing is going to happen at the end. Apart from Police Escort, the crimes are barely above Reskin, but Reskin would have been better because the main story crimes weren't awful. This, alongside Black Cat, is what I meant when I said Turf Wars was better than the heist in almost every way. Let's wrap things up. Turf Wars is a good DLC. Worth $10? You gotta be joking. But if you have it, it's certainly worth your time. They're gonna have to pull off a miracle to make the season pass worth the money. I'm hopeful, but realistically, it's unlikely. Here's what I predict we will get. Number 1, we will get the Raimi suit because it makes sense from a business perspective. Number 2, we will get a Miles mission or cutscene because the past 2 DLCs have been talking about giving him a lesson. Number 3, Silver Sable will return out of guilt from letting her weapons fall into the Magia's hands, and perhaps help you stop Hammerhead. Number 4, we might see the debut of Snow. If there was ever a time to do it, it's December. Number 5, despite continuing to progress into a Wraith persona, Yuri will help Spider-Man in some meaningful way. Number 6, Black Cat will be revealed to have survived the explosion, maybe in person, maybe not, or there will at least be major hints that she is still alive. That's all I got. My fingers are crossed for something good. As for the game on the whole, you might have noticed that subtitle names now glow blue, and we still have no way of getting rainy weather. I will die on this hill. 90% of Turf Wars is set in a rainy city, and that serves the story fantastically. But I also thought that we'd therefore have reliably rainy weather. If you ever wanted it, you could just switch out the city. But then Insomniac pulls a fast one on us and switches it to night at the last minute. Why? What do you lot have against rain? Next DLC is coming out mid-December, so how about that for a Christmas present? Thanks everyone for watching. By the end of the year, I hope to come out with a gargantuan project I've been working on for months, so stay tuned for that. And you might be interested in my backlog, which includes reviews on the base game, the heist, Web of Shadows, and a litany of others. If you can spare anything to help keep the channel afloat, any donations are greatly helpful and extremely appreciated. Thanks again, I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.